6 F-18. Super Hornets screamed through Alaska's morning sky the moment her radar signature materialized from nowhere. No transponder, no clearance, just a ghost aircraft diving straight toward the USS Gerald Ford at 500 knots, cutting through the icy air like death itself. Combat Air Patrol leader Carson Wright's finger hovered over the trigger as his HUD locked onto the unknown aircraft. Unidentified aircraft, this is Viper Lead. You are entering restricted naval airspace. Identify yourself immediately or you will be engaged. Static crackled through the comms. Then, a voice, calm as winter morning, female, carrying a call sign that made every pilot in the formation freeze mid-breath. This is Phoenix. Welcome to the story Chronicles. Before we dive deeper into this incredible story, tell us in the comments where you're watching from. And if stories like this deserve to be heard, hit that subscribe button because we're just getting started. Naval Air Station Deadhorse, Alaska. 547 hours, 2 years, 4 months, and 16 days since Phoenix vanished. Aria Thompson had been officially dead for over 2 years, listed as KIA after her F-18 disappeared during a classified reconnaissance mission near Russian territorial waters. No wreckage, no emergency beacon, no body. The Navy had held a memorial service with an empty casket and given her parents a folded flag. But ghosts don't fly Super Hornets. The radar contact had appeared at exactly 0544 hours, materializing from the electronic void like a digital resurrection. Chief Petty Officer Marcus Kane, monitoring the early morning cap from the USS Gerald Ford's Combat Information Center, nearly choked on his coffee when the signature painted bright green on his scope. "Sir, we've got a problem," Kane called to Admiral Victor Kane, his voice tight with disbelief. "Unknown aircraft, bearing 270, altitude 12,000, speed 500 knots and climbing. No IFF, no flight plan, no nothing." Admiral Kane strode over, his weathered face creased with concern. At 62, he'd seen enough surprises in his career to know they usually meant trouble. "Any coalition assets in that grid?" "Negative, sir. Closest friendly is our cap, 40 miles southeast." The Admiral's jaw tightened. "Launch intercept, full weapon status." Within 3 minutes, 6 F-18 Super Hornets had thundered off the Ford's deck, their twin engines painting fire across the gray morning sky. Carson Wright, call sign Viper Lead, commanded the intercept formation with the cold precision of a man who'd done this dance too many times. "Viper flight, weapons hot, cleared to engage on my order," Wright radioed, his formation spreading into attack positions around the unknown aircraft. That's when she spoke. "This is Phoenix." The words hit the formation like a sonic boom. Wright's hands actually trembled on his stick. Phoenix wasn't just any call sign. It belonged to the most decorated female naval aviator in recent history, Aria Thompson, the woman who'd saved 12 sailors from a burning destroyer in the Baltic, the pilot who'd single-handedly taken down 3 enemy aircraft during the Syrian crisis, the ghost who'd been sleeping in Arlington Cemetery for 2 years. "Say again, unknown aircraft," Wright managed, his voice cracking slightly. "Carson, this is Aria. Phoenix, tell Uncle Victor I'm coming home." The bottom dropped out of Wright's world. Uncle Victor. Only one person had ever called Admiral Kane that, his niece, Aria Thompson, the woman whose funeral he'd attended 26 months ago. In the Ford CIC, Admiral Kane went white as Arctic ice. The secure comm crackled to life as Wright's voice came through, barely controlled. "Admiral, the pilot, she knows you. She called you Uncle Victor. Sir, I think we might have a problem." Kane's hand gripped the radio so hard his knuckles went white. "Phoenix, if that's really you, authenticate with Papa 77 Delta." A pause, then, "Papa 77 Delta." "Uncle Victor, it's me, and I found Owen." The radio fell from Kane's trembling fingers, clattering to the steel deck. Owen Thompson, Aria's twin brother, missing in action for over 2 years, lost during the same classified mission that had supposedly killed Aria. "Sir?" Chief Kane whispered. "Your orders?" Admiral Kane stared at the radar blip that defied everything he thought he knew about life, death, and the space between. His niece, his goddaughter, the woman he'd helped raise after her parents died in a car crash when she was 16, was somehow flying toward his ship. "Clear her for landing," he whispered, "and prep medical. If that's really Aria, God knows what condition she's in." Aria's F-18 approached the Ford with the fluid grace of a dancer, returning to the stage after years away. No wasted motion, no hesitation. Her trap was textbook perfect, 3-wire, exactly where it should be. As her jet rolled to a stop, every person on the flight deck stood frozen, watching a ghost climb out of a machine that shouldn't exist. She looked like hell. Her flight suit was patched and repatched, faded from sun and salt water. Her helmet was scratched and dented. But her eyes, those piercing green eyes that had stared down enemy pilots and bureaucrats with equal intensity, were exactly as Admiral Kane remembered. "Hello, Uncle Victor," she said quietly as he approached across the deck, her voice barely audible over the wind. Kane stopped 3 feet away, afraid that if he moved closer, she might vanish like a mirage. "Aria, is it really you?" She nodded, pulling something from her flight suit pocket. A dog tag chain, but hanging from it wasn't her own tag. It was Owen's. "I found him, Uncle Victor. I found Owen." Kane's breath caught. "Where? How?" "Russian research station, abandoned since the Soviet collapse. Coordinates are in my nav computer." Her voice was steady, but Kane could see the cost written in the lines around her eyes. "He's alive, but he's not the same." "What do you mean?" Aria looked out over the dark water of the Arctic Ocean toward the coordinates only she knew. They were experimenting on him, on others, some kind of enhanced interrogation program that never officially existed. "Uncle Victor, what they did to him," her voice finally cracked. "He doesn't remember me most days." The weight of her words settled over the deck like fog. Admiral Kane reached out, his hand touching her shoulder, solid, real, impossibly alive. "How long have you been searching for him?" "Every day since I escaped. 2 years, 4 months, 16 days. She turned back to him, and he saw something in her eyes that made his stomach drop. "Uncle Victor, there are others. Dozens of them. American servicemen who were reported KIA but are still alive in that facility." The implications hit Kane like a physical blow. If what Aria was saying was true, it meant American prisoners had been held in a secret Russian facility for years while their families grieved at empty graves. "Aria, this is enormous. We need to get you debriefed, get medical to check you out. Contact Washington." "No." Her voice cut through his planning like a blade. "No Washington, no Pentagon, no officials." She stepped closer, her voice dropping to barely above a whisper. "Uncle Victor, someone on our side knew. Someone with stars on their shoulders signed off on leaving those men behind." Kane felt the blood drain from his face. "That's a serious accusation, Aria. I have proof." She pulled a waterproof bag from another pocket, handing it to him. "Documents, communications, orders with signatures you'll recognize." Kane opened the bag with trembling fingers. Inside were photographs of documents, radio intercepts, and what looked like official Pentagon correspondence. As he read, his face grew progressively paler. "Jesus Christ," he breathed. "Some of these signatures. Aria, these go all the way to the top. That's why I couldn't use official channels. That's why I've been operating alone for 2 years." Her jaw set with determination. "I need you to help me get them out, all of them. Because if we don't, those men are going to die in that facility and no one will ever know they were abandoned by their own government." Kane looked at his niece, this woman who'd supposedly been dead for over 2 years, who'd spent that time searching for her brother and uncovering a conspiracy that reached the highest levels of military command. "What do you need?" "A team, 6 operators, volunteers only. Someone you trust absolutely." She paused, studying his face. "And Uncle Victor?" "It has to be off the books, completely black. Because if the wrong people find out we're coming, those prisoners will be dead before we cross the Arctic Circle." Admiral Kane stared at the documents in his hands, evidence of betrayal that could topple careers and end lives. Then he looked at Aria, his goddaughter, the woman who'd crawled back from the dead to expose a truth that powerful people wanted buried. "When do we leave?" Aria smiled for the first time since landing, but it was a cold, predatory expression that promised justice for the abandoned and hell for the guilty. "Tomorrow night. When the aurora borealis peaks, we'll have natural cover for the insertion." 18 hours later, Aria stood in the Ford's briefing room facing 6 of the most dangerous men in the U.S. Navy. SEAL Team. 6 operators, handpicked by Admiral Kane, each one a volunteer who understood this mission existed in the gray areas where politicians feared to tread. Master Chief Kai Brooks spoke for the team. "Ma'am, with respect, you've been missing for 2 years. How do we know this isn't some kind of setup?" Aria had expected the question. She activated the room's main screen, displaying satellite imagery of the Russian facility. "Because, Master Chief, 3 hours ago, my brother sent me this." The screen showed a recent photograph, clearly taken with a hidden camera. Owen Thompson, recognizable despite being thinner and older, standing in what appeared to be a prison cell. But he wasn't alone. Behind him, barely visible in the shadows, were other men in American military uniforms. "Your brother's alive?" Brooks asked, his skepticism fading. "Alive and sending intelligence. The facility is minimally guarded. The Russians think these prisoners are forgotten. But there's a complication." She changed the display to show building schematics. "The facility is wired for destruction. If they detect a rescue attempt, they'll trigger explosives that will eliminate all evidence and all witnesses." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. "So we're looking at a stealth extraction," said Petty Officer Jake Riley. "In and out without being detected." "Exactly. We have one shot. If we blow this, those men die, and the conspiracy gets buried with them." Admiral Kane stepped forward. "Gentlemen, I need to be clear about something. This mission does not exist. If you're captured, killed, or compromised, the Navy will disavow all knowledge. You'll be labeled rogues, and your families will be told you died in a training accident." The SEALs exchanged glances. They'd operated in gray areas before, but this was darker than most. "Sir," Master Chief Brooks said finally, "what's our extraction plan if things go sideways?" Kane and Aria exchanged a look. "There isn't one," Kane admitted. "If this mission fails, you're on your own." Another silence. Then Petty Officer Riley spoke up. "Ma'am, how many Americans are we talking about?" 17 confirmed. Maybe more. 17 men who've been written off as dead, Brooks mused. 17 families who've been grieving ghosts. "That's right." The Master Chief stood straighter. "Ma'am, we're in." The other SEALs nodded their agreement. Aria felt something she hadn't experienced in 2 years. Hope. "Thank you," she said simply. "All of you." 24 hours later, under the dancing lights of the aurora borealis, a stolen Russian helicopter approached the abandoned research facility carrying 6 Navy SEALs and 1 supposedly dead pilot on the most dangerous mission of their lives. Aria piloted the helicopter with skills honed by 2 years of flying under enemy radar. Beside her, Master Chief Brooks monitored their approach on thermal imaging. 2 guards at the main entrance, 3 more patrolling the perimeter, he reported quietly. "Looks like skeleton crew, just like your brother said." "Remember," Aria said through her headset, "we have exactly 43 minutes before the facility's automated check-in with Moscow. If they miss that deadline, this whole place goes up in smoke." The helicopter touched down silently in a clearing 300 meters from the facility. The team moved through the Arctic darkness like shadows, their breath visible in the -30 air. At the facility's rear entrance, Aria produced a key card. Owen slipped this to a maintenance worker who passed it to a contact in Anchorage, should get us past the outer security. The card worked. They were inside. The facility was a maze of concrete corridors and steel doors, lit by flickering fluorescent lights that cast dancing shadows on the walls. Aria led them through the complex with certainty born of studying Owen's hand-drawn maps for months. "Prison section should be down this corridor," she whispered. They found the first cell 3 minutes later. Inside, a man in a tattered U.S. Army uniform sat on a narrow cot, staring at nothing. When he looked up at the team, confusion filled his eyes. Who are you?" he asked in English, his voice rusty from disuse. "We're Americans," Brooks said softly. "We're here to take you home." The man's face crumpled. "Home?" I thought. "They told me America forgot about me." Aria's jaw tightened. "No one forgot you, soldier. What's your name?" "Captain David Martinez, U.S. Army Rangers. I've been here, God, I don't know how long." 2 years, 4 months, Aria said, "and we're getting you out." They moved through the facility systematically, unlocking cells and gathering the prisoners. Most were in similar condition to Martinez, physically weak but mentally intact. A few were worse, staring blankly at their rescuers with eyes that had seen too much. Then they found Owen. Aria's brother was in the last cell they checked, sitting on his bunk and drawing on scraps of paper with a pencil worn down to nothing. When the door opened, he looked up with the same green eyes as his sister, but they held no recognition. "Owen," Aria whispered, stepping into the cell. He tilted his head like a curious animal. "Do I know you?" The words hit Aria harder than any bullet. She forced herself to stay calm. "I'm your sister, Aria, Phoenix." For a moment, something flickered in Owen's eyes. "Phoenix," he repeated slowly. "I remember a bird. Fire. That's right," Aria's voice caught. "You used to call me Firebird when we were kids." Owen stood shakily, moving toward her. "Firebird?" His hand reached out tentatively, touching her face. "Aria?" "Yes," she breathed. "It's me." The recognition lasted only seconds before confusion clouded his features again. But it was enough. Aria knew her brother was still in there, somewhere beneath whatever they'd done to him. "We need to move," Brooks interrupted gently. 20 minutes until check-in." The extraction began. 17 American servicemen, all officially dead, being led through a Russian facility by a woman who'd spent 2 years clawing her way back from the grave to find them. They were 50 meters from the exit when the alarms began wailing. "Contact Moscow Control," a Russian voice echoed over the facility's intercom. "Unauthorized personnel in Sector 7. "Run," Aria commanded. The team sprinted toward the exit, supporting prisoners who could barely walk after years of captivity. Behind them, Russian guards flooded into the corridors, their shouts echoing off concrete walls. They burst through the facility's main entrance as bullets began cracking past their heads. The helicopter sat in the clearing ahead, rotors already spinning. "Go, go, go!" Brooks shouted, providing covering fire as the prisoners stumbled toward the aircraft. Aria was helping Owen into the helicopter when she felt the bullet punch through her shoulder, spinning her around. Blood soaked her flight suit as she fell to one knee. "Aria!" Owen's voice cut through the chaos, and for the first time in 2 years, it was completely clear. Her brother, the real Owen, was staring down at her with recognition blazing in his eyes. "Sister!" "I'm okay," she gasped, pushing herself back up. "Get in the bird." The last prisoner was loaded as Russian reinforcements poured from the facility. Aria threw herself into the pilot's seat and pulled the helicopter into the air, bullets sparking off the fuselage. Below them, the facility erupted in flame as the Russians triggered their destruction protocol. But it was too late. The evidence was gone, but the witnesses, 17 American servicemen who'd been abandoned by their government, were alive and heading home. 6 hours later, the helicopter touched down on the USS Gerald Ford's deck. Admiral Kane waited in the pre-dawn darkness as 17 ghosts climbed out of an aircraft that officially didn't exist, led by a woman who was supposed to be dead. The rescued prisoners were immediately taken to medical, but Owen Thompson remained by his sister's side as Navy corpsmen treated her gunshot wound. "I remember," he said quietly, holding her uninjured hand. "Not everything, but I remember you never giving up. Even when the Russians told us we'd been forgotten, I knew you'd come." Aria squeezed his hand. "I made a promise, little brother. I always keep my promises." Admiral Kane approached, his face grim. "Aria, we have a problem. Washington is already spinning this. They're calling it an unauthorized operation conducted by rogue elements." "Of course they are," Aria said wearily. "Can't have the truth getting out." "There's more. Someone leaked word of the rescue to the press. CNN is running the story in 3 hours. The families of these men are about to find out their loved ones have been alive all this time." Aria smiled, despite the pain from her shoulder. "Good. Let the whole world know what was done to these men. Let them know that somewhere in Washington, people with stars on their shoulders decided that American lives were acceptable losses for political convenience." Kane nodded slowly. "There's going to be hell to pay. Congressional investigations, careers destroyed, maybe criminal charges." "Good," Owen said, his voice strong and clear. "It's time for the truth." As the sun rose over the Arctic Ocean, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson, Aria Thompson looked out over the water that had hidden her for 2 years. She'd found her brother. She'd rescued 17 forgotten heroes. And she'd exposed a conspiracy that reached the highest levels of American military command. The cost would be enormous. Careers would end. Trust would be shattered. But 17 families would learn their loved ones were alive, and 17 prisoners would finally come home. "Phoenix," Admiral Kane said quietly. "What happens now?" Aria stood slowly, her brother supporting her wounded arm. "Now? Now we face the music, all of us, because that's what heroes do. They stand up and take responsibility for their actions, even when it costs them everything." She looked at the 17 men being treated by Navy medical personnel, men who'd endured years of captivity because someone decided their lives were expendable. "But Uncle Victor, it was worth it. Every risk, every sacrifice, every sleepless night for 2 years. These men are going home." As if summoned by her words, Master Chief Brooks appeared at her side. "Ma'am, the men asked me to give you this." He handed her a piece of paper. On it, 17 signatures surrounded a simple message. "Thank you for not forgetting us. Semper Fi." Aria read the note, tears streaming down her face. Behind her, the sun continued its rise, burning away the darkness and illuminating a new day where 17 heroes no longer had to hide in the shadows. The story would spread around the world. The families would weep with joy. Politicians would scramble to cover their tracks. Generals would face courts-martial. But none of that mattered to Aria Thompson in that moment. She'd kept her promise. She'd brought her brother home. And she'd proven that some things, honor, loyalty, the sacred bond between those who serve, are worth any sacrifice. The phoenix had risen from the ashes. And with her, the truth. If this story moved you, share it with someone who believes in loyalty, sacrifice, and the courage to do what's right, even when the whole world is watching. Before you go, tell us in the comments, what would you risk to save someone you love? If you believe stories like this deserve to be heard, hit the subscribe button. With your support, we'll always be here to bring you the stories you care about. This is the Story Chronicles, where truth burns brighter than fiction and where heroes never truly die. They're only waiting for someone brave enough to bring them home.